Welcome back to Lost Legacies. I'm Matt.
And I'm Sam.
How's it going, Sam?
Yeah, it's going all right. It's pretty good.
Cool. Doing anything exciting this weekend?
No, I tried not to freeze to death.
Yeah, it got pretty cold here in Texas.
Yeah.
Luckily, I only lost power for a few hours.
Hey, that's good.
So that was good. Especially compared to 2021 when we lost power and water for like 3 days. So, yeah. I did a little bit of comic book reading. I got to play some video games.
Nice.
It was just very, very chill, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ours was very chill too. Watch The Thing.
Ooh.
And then I felt like I had to round that out with like something else fun. So watch Twister, which I hadn't seen in years. And then because I'm nothing if not like, well, I like the dichotomy, I like opposites, and so I thought, well, if I saw The Thing this morning because it's freezing cold outside and we're all trapped inside right now, I'm gonna watch something hot. So I watched The Mummy.
Oh, nice. Okay.
From the 90s, Brendan Fraser. Yeah. So I thought that was a nice little,
Which one?
triple feature
Which
kind
one
of.
do you enjoy more, The Mummy or The Mummy Returns?
Uh mm.
Yep.
See, now that's interesting. Oh, okay. It might be a hot take, but I think I enjoy The Mummy Returns more.
Dude, so do I. I think The Mummy's a perfect movie. The
Mm-hmm.
Mummy Returns isn't. There's a lot
Mm-hmm.
about it that I have issues with,
Yeah.
mostly being the kid. Uh
Yeah.
and the fact that like also that like there's not really like the red shirts. The horror aspect of the first film was like you have this big cast and you slowly start getting smaller and smaller.
Yeah.
They all start dying. This one you didn't really have that. The second one they have like the mercenary guys who they all just kill at once, And it's like, oh, okay. But I actually think it's a more fun, adventurous movie.
Yeah, I think like it's like the first one is sort of it's the mummy, or I'm sorry, it's like it's Indiana Jones for like, you know, this night. No, I got that confused. I'm sorry. The 90s mummy is for like the post Indiana Jones crowd. Like we've had all these other adventure movies and it's trying to recapture that sort of same spirit but keep it true to form, like keep it that like, hey, like this is a horror movie.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a little more actiony but it still has a lot of spookiness to it. The second movie, they're just like, we're kind of throwing the spookiness out the window, we're giving you action adventure,
Yeah.
and that feels like an Indiana Jones movie on a diet of like pop rocks and soda.
Yeah.
That, yeah.
And I was gonna say it's very similar to the way where I feel like Raiders of the Lost Ark is the perfect film, and it's historically the one that's seen as the cinematic masterpiece.
Yeah.
But personally, I think Last Crusade is the best indie movie.
100%. Yeah.
You know, so it's kind of the same way with the Mummy. I prefer the second one, but like they're both pretty damn good.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
and who's the director of those?
Stephen Sommers.
Stephen Sommers.
Hmm.
I think he took what he learned from the first one and he just did it the second one even better. Like it
Yeah.
was such a natural progression.
Hmm. And I think the second one feels a lot better just because everybody has such a rapport that, you kind of don't need to watch the first movie to watch the second movie. Like
Right.
you can just go in and he's like, oh, these people are adventurers. Oh, they all have a history. Oh, there's Oded Fair. And, oh, and they know him. That's great.
Yeah.
And they're all just kind of like, well, here we go again, stuff like that. And it's like, it's
Yeah.
really, yeah, it's fun. There are some detriments. I think uh a lot of the CGI doesn't hold up. I think that's also true of the first movie, but we forgive it more because it's
Right.
sort of used in a different way.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, I think yeah, it's always weird when you bring in a kid, you know,
Yeah.
into the sequels. I think there are exceptions. I think there are ways that you can do, a kid sidekick like character and do it well.
You
But
gotta
I
do it like what's the
a lot of
kid's name
people,
in Up?
yeah, he's got to be like Russell.
Russell, there you go. Yeah, you just make him cool and fun. Like you want to hang out with this kid, you know?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. You don't want to slap him. So,
yeah.
yeah. Yeah. Well, see, I'm glad we agree on that. The Mummy Returns.
Me
Right
too.
on.
I'm surprised. Wow.
Okay. Yeah. Um I just read too cuz the Mummy is always showing up on my algorithm on Instagram, and
Hmm.
the Mummy fact of the day was that Oded Fair, his character, was supposed to
Hmm.
die at the end of the first one. He
Oh.
like buys them time, and I think it's technically still in the film. I
Hmm.
don't know if they actually filmed the death scene, but they have the scene where he's like go, and he like charges them into like the hall,
Hmm.
and we don't see him again. Uh but the director is just saying like he's such a heroic character, we couldn't kill him off. I
Yeah.
was like, yeah, so they brought him back for
Best
another adventure.
best decision, really.
Yeah, I know, totally. So, oh man, awesome. Speaking about an adventure we don't want to take, let's just jump into Dark this week because last week we talked like 20 minutes before we started.
Hmm.
Um, so this week we're talking about Dark season 2, episode 2, Dark Matter.
Whoa.
Jonas gets a cool new scar. Egon faces off with his old nemesis, and Claudia meets herself from the future. Boy, oh boy, what an episode.
What an episode.
Yeah. Okay, so you were texting me last night. You and Kat were talking about it for like 30 minutes. What were y'all discussing? Like,
Oh man. We were discussing a lot, but this is jumping ahead a little bit, but it was essentially the scene where 80s Claudia and future Claudia meet, and uh how she like proved that she was from the future, and like, well, look out your office window, you'll see all the stuff happens. She described everything that happens,
yeah.
and she's like, I know all of this because I was told all of this, and I was exactly where you were,
Mm-hmm.
hearing all of this. um and we were just going back and forth about it because it's like it's the thing that I don't like about a lot of time travel stories, is that exact thing. It's all a loop.
Mm-hmm.
It's all a circle. Like there is no original timeline where Claudia looked out that office window of her own volition and saw those things without the prompting of her future self.
Mm-hmm.
There isn't one in this universe, and that weirds me out.
It weirds me out too, but something that's interesting that older Claudia did bring up was that they're entering the final loop.
That
And
is true. That is
that
true.
really fascinates me because I'm like, well, wait a second. If there's a final, doesn't that imply that there was a first?
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of like, did was there a first time where Claudia just happened to look out the window? I don't know, because it's one of those things where it's like, how would you remember that? Obviously she sees one of her employees like drop the pin and he's checking out like the secretaries, but like
Mm-hmm.
that would stay in your head. But 33 years from now, you're gonna remember that moment.
Yeah.
That's where it's kind of weird as far as like as far as the first time goes.
Yeah.
The first loop. But this also kind of goes into the whole concept of like free will and stuff, because like let's look at Ulrich in season 1, how like he inadvertently caused all of this, or at least a big part of this to happen. You know,
Hmm.
he's going after Helgi, but he finds little Helgi. He tries to kill him, doesn't succeed,
Hmm.
and then we see how he grows up and helps enable this whole storyline to begin. You know, and it's like, well, I don't even know how to, I don't even know what I'm saying. Like like what was the first time? Well, I mean, see, and this is what's tricky because to all of them, it is the first time,
Yeah.
but it's us who know it isn't. You know?
Well, it's us that knows that it isn't,
Hmm.
but it's also Claudia and Jonas
Yeah,
because
yeah,
they know things. Like one, okay, like you were saying, like Claudia knows that this is the final loop. This is the
uh
final time we're going to be able to go through this. And then last season, Jonas, or I'm sorry, Noah. It's Noah. That's what I meant. So it's Claudia and Noah.
Okay.
They know things outside of the time loop. Like they're not experiencing it for the first time because
Oh, I see.
Noah knows that Jonas's plan to blow up the thing and stop time travel, it doesn't work.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
he knows that before Jonas does.
yeah.
So it's sort of yeah, so it's interesting. Yeah. So yeah, that was just the thing that we were going back and forth on, like not necessarily the logistics, but yeah, just like that's an interesting thing. We were also trying to figure out who the girl from the future is.
Oh, with the scar?
Yeah,
Yeah.
because she's just girl from the future in the
Hmm.
credits, and d- because this is dark, because this is the type of show that Dark is. I don't think she's just a nothing character. She's not just a nobody,
Right.
because even the characters who have very few lines or show up very little, they have a part to play.
Yeah.
And I'm curious what her story is because I just feel like especially with how like her story goes this episode and where we leave her off, I just kind of feel like, is she going to inadvertently time travel, or is she going to figure out how to time travel?
Mm.
And is she already somewhere? Have we already seen her? But
Mm.
it's like it's a I don't, I don't know.
Hmm.
It's like, oh hey, we watched Mikhail kill himself in the first scene and we didn't realize that was him, you know?
Right,
But
yeah.
and my only conclusion, not my only conclusion, like my hypothesis. Here's my hypothesis. My hypothesis is that she figures out how to time travel. She goes back in time. She goes back too far, or she just goes, she's trying to look for Jonas. I think that's going to be her thing. She's trying to look for
Hmm.
Jonas, doesn't find Jonas, but somehow transplants herself into the the past
Mm. Hmm.
and somehow is involved with the Sigmundus cult.
Interesting. Yeah.
Because and the only only pieces of evidence for this is that I think she's already there, is that it takes a certain type of person to grow up in the future, in this post-apocalyptic future. It takes a certain type of person to grow up like that. What do you become like that as an adult?
Yeah.
And I feel like one of my theories is she's potentially Helgi's mom.
Interesting. Well, she doesn't have a scar though.
Okay, well that clears that up because I
Yeah.
I also I also didn't remember what Helgi's
Yeah.
mom was like. So,
That
hey, I don't know. They're the Sigmundus cult. They can do anything
that's true.
apparently.
And that kind of gets back to what we were talking about last week of how scars are used to upon editing it. I think I kind of touched on it, but like I didn't really full of like make a fully formed thought and we just kept going.
Mm.
It kind of sounded like we were talking about how uh, they're using scars to indicate like who's bad. That
Mm-hmm.
wasn't what I was implying. I was just implying that that is a thing in cinema, and a lot of people are kind of getting sick of it. Of like, of course, this is the bad guy because they have some kind of scarification. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's the
Some form
point I
of
was making.
disfigurement. Yeah.
Yeah, for in Dark, I was just saying it's really interesting how certain characters they're having to give them something physical so we know. You know, there's
Mm-hmm.
so many characters who don't have it, so we're like, oh man, this could be anyone. This could
Mm-hmm.
be that was Mikhail in the first scene and we didn't know it. You know, but
Yeah.
then characters like Helgi were like, oh wait a second, that old guy has that same scar, you know, on his
Mm-hmm.
ear, you know, so it is in a way used to recognize the character because they're all white, they're all German, you know.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what we were trying to get the point across last week. Um, as for this girl, I don't know, like because we haven't really met an older woman with the scar, at least that I
Mm-hmm.
can think of. Uh, but I was also thinking about that as well because it's been 33 years since the event, since the apocalyptic event happens
Mm-hmm.
in Winded. That girl is not 33 years old, so she was
Yeah.
born post apocalypse.
Yeah.
So, and the fact that we see so many people still alive, like that's interesting because we also know that a lot of like basically they say everyone dies in Winded,
Yeah.
you know, and they show graves of certain people and stuff. So I'm like, okay, but Elizabeth survives.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, so we do know there are survivors. So that's gonna kind of be interesting to see how that plays out. Who's still around? Is Elizabeth the only survivor from Winded?
Mm.
Was there
Yeah.
more? You know, where are these other people coming from? Who's this girl's parents? So
Yeah.
yeah. And I was even thinking too, I wonder if she could have gone with Jonas. Like there was no indication or warning that this was just a one person trip, you know?
Yeah. 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 She very, I don't know. I think she very well could
And
have.
I was like, Jonas, take the cute girl with you. But knowing the show, y'all might be related. So be
Yeah.
careful.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Oh, but speaking back about Claudia meeting Claudia, we found out how Gretchen traveled through time.
Mm-hmm.
Older Claudia brought her. I'm
Yeah.
like, okay, all right. So she brought her to the future to help convince Claudia of time travel.
Mm-hmm.
Something else we haven't discussed. Last week and this week, Jonas is listening to tapes regarding this God particle and the apocalypse, and it's Claudia talking,
Yeah.
which is fascinating because we've already established that we don't have a modern day Claudia. We always
Yeah.
see Claudia from the 80s and then we see the older Claudia.
Yeah.
So at some point she's going to experience or find out about this apocalypse or what.
Mm-hmm.
And how awesome was this whole episode for her was so cool getting to meet herself.
Yeah.
And then older her is showing her the time machine and stuff and she just vanishes. Oh,
Mm-hmm.
and she gives her the notes. So at
Yeah.
the end, Claudia in the 80s goes to bury the notes in the backyard. And what does she find? The time machine buried in the
Mm-hmm.
backyard. I was like,
Mm-hmm.
oh,
What a God, it's so cool. So cool. And the editing of that whole scene, it's like
yeah,
I loved that we got like the split screens this episode
yeah, yeah.
and that they were used to sort of transition and move, into each
Hmm.
other and into different moments. I was like, fantastic. Just yeah, utterly fantastic.
Yeah,
Oh man.
yeah. I just thought it's so cool. So older Claudia goes to the past to bury the time machine
Hmm.
in what was that? We said the 20s?
Yeah, I guess it has to be.
Because they still said Windin Town of the Future or whatever that sign
Yeah.
was. So that's back when Egon was young.
Hmm.
Okay, so that's where Ulrich is. He's imprisoned.
Yeah.
Younger, modern day Ulrich.
Uh-huh.
Um, yeah, that's so wild. Like, okay, so now we can assume older Claudia doesn't have a time machine anymore because
Dude.
she gives it to modern day herself.
Well, maybe because what remember last season she's going to freaking what's his name? The watchmaker. She
Tenhouse.
goes Tannhaus, yeah. She goes to Tannhaus and
Yeah.
asks him to build her a time machine.
Yeah, but that's when he was young, right?
Yeah.
So he that was probably the first time machine.
I don't know.
So,
Where what was the first time machine?
oh,
Again,
you see, that's a good point.
this
Yeah, that's
whole
a good
thing is a
point.
loop. It's like, where did the time machine come from?
So,
She
so
has his designs, but
yeah,
he doesn't remember building it. All yeah, this
yeah.
whole thing is out of whack. It's all crazy.
And we know that there's technically only one, but
Technically.
people have it through different moments in time.
Yeah.
So Jonas gave him the old one, and he took the new one, the first one, the one
Hmm.
Claudia commissioned.
Hmm.
Middle-aged Jonas gets that one.
Hmm. But then which is the one that she buries?
Yeah,
Because
so at
Claudia,
some point she gets it back.
yeah. Yeah.
Because
So
right now,
I
middle-aged Jonas, he takes Hannah back to the 80s,
hmm.
and she sees little Mikhail with the
Hmm.
nurse lady in the house, and she's like just freaking out and crying and all that stuff.
Hmm.
That's got to be wild because last episode 2 they kind of touched on it where Jonas was like, "You saw me after I left in the rain at the bus station with my yellow coat. It was you and your dad,
Hmm.
and you told me about Chernobyl." And Hannah's like starts thinking, like, "Oh crap!" It's kind of like one of those random memories that just comes back to you, like, "Oh yeah."
Hmm.
So I figured now she's starting to see like, oh God, the little kid that I fell in love with when we were kids, that's that's Mikhail.
Yeah.
Uh
Heartbreaking.
dude, I know.
Devastating.
I know. And it was
Wow.
good to see from Hannah because we actually see her going through an emotion that's not crazy.
Yeah.
We've only seen her like really get obsessive over her affair with Ulrich, and she gets
Hmm.
pissed about that. But to actually see her like heartbroken and it's a much different compared to last week where she was just gonna kill herself, almost no emotion at all. It was like probably just depression. But this
Yeah.
one, like you actually see the pain in her and stuff. And I'm like, nice,
Yeah.
nice, well done.
Yeah. Speaking of pain,
Uh huh.
speaking of depression,
Uh huh.
um, let's talk about Egon for a second.
Okay.
So one, uh, he has cancer,
Yeah. Yeah.
and it sounds pretty bad.
Yeah.
Because the hospital's wanting him to go in like soon, and he's like, no, 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 I can't do that. Um, Tries to tell Claudia, can't do it. But now that he's retired, he's just looking through all of his old stuff, all of his old case stuff,
He
and
has
true to
he has an investigation wall,
uh-huh.
just like we were talking about last week. You're like, yep.
Hmm. Hmm. And he figures out that the man that they arrested, the child murderer, the supposed child murderer that he arrested back in the day, is still alive and still in Winden.
Uh huh.
And so he drives, he cons his way in, manages to meet the old version of this dude, and it's a freaking old man Yorick. Now, if I
Dude.
thought Yorick was scary as a in his prime cop,
Uh-huh.
I am mortified of this version of
The investigator, as they call him.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. I'm like, I don't like this guy.
dude.
Uh and he had it's almost like the only emotion in him anymore is just anger.
Yeah. Dude, the casting, like when I first saw him, I'm like, is that the same guy?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. That's what I
no
thought too.
way. And
Yeah.
like, no, it's not. Like again, props to the casting and the casting director of this show, RIP.
Hmm.
Um, damn man, like brilliant, you know?
And and
He's
and
been there for
and
33 years.
he's been there for 33 years. I think the heartbreaking thing, we're watching Hannah, witness like a young Mikhail in her house.
Yeah.
In her house, she's been living in that house, this whole time, all of that, witnessing him as a kid, realizing to her horror what has happened, what she's inadvertently done. You want to talk about heartbreaking? Yorick is alive in the same time that his son is, and he doesn't know it.
Uh-huh.
He
And
doesn't know that his son is there.
yeah, and this cements it. So now we know he doesn't get out. You know, because last season it was a cliffhanger. It's like, okay, he's in jail. We'll see
Yeah.
what happens season two. Well, now we see him 33 years later, still incarcerated. Like,
Hmm.
oh, okay.
Yeah.
Maybe he gets out from this part out, but he's been in there for 33 years. You
Hmm.
know what? And it's like rightly so. Like he tried to murder a kid.
Hmm.
It's like he's man, he's paying for it, you know.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's so heartbreaking, dude. And he even tells Egon, he's like, I remember, I know when you died, it was in all the papers.
Hmm.
So like he knows that Egon's dying. I was like, oh
Hmm.
man.
Hmm.
But he quotes that metal album again, you know. I'm just like,
God.
and Egon's like, what? What's going on? I'm like, oh, dude.
Hmm. Hmm.
The
And
rage in that man, I can't even imagine.
yeah. Yeah. And he just keeps calling him out. He's like, you're stupid. You don't
Yeah,
know. Like you still don't know anything,
yeah,
and that's how you're gonna die. And I'm like, dude,
uh-huh.
it's like, man, I don't like it's such a this show is giving us such fascinating characters that we're like, I can't in good conscience root for you, but
Yeah.
every single time any version of you is on screen, I'm like, yeah, hell yeah,
You
this
it's
metal as hell. I
it's
love
like okay, like especially with Ulrich, like you can't you can root him for him in season one, you know, he's a very rootable for character. Is that how you say it? Easy to root for
for.
character. Uh
I don't know about easy, but you
well,
find things about him that you're like, okay, yeah, like I'm
yeah, like
kind of on your side.
he's not a good guy, but like the whole driving point of at least the beginning of the show is trying to find this missing kid, you know, and
Hmm.
he's the dad. As many
Hmm.
flaws as he has, he's the one who's tirelessly trying to find his kid, you know. And I think
Hmm.
that's something a lot of people can empathize with, even if you don't have kids.
Yeah.
But then by the time you get to the end of the season, you're like, nope, cross the line, dude, cross the line. But now here we are, we're seeing this version of him now, and seeing how he's changed and how much he's still the same at the same time. And we still want to root for him. Like we want things to work out for him, but he still pay like the penance. Like, is that enough? You know,
Hmm.
he didn't succeed in killing Helgi, so his 33 years locked up, is that his penance? You know,
Yeah.
it's a very weird place to sit as an audience member because you're like, how do we root for this guy? But at the same time, you're rooting not just for him, but for his family. You want the
Mm-hmm.
family to get back together.
Mm-hmm.
And now it's like, well, we know what happens to Mikhail.
Yeah.
And now we know that Ulrich's been there for 33 years. We don't know what happens next though.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just like we continue to see the family fracture, and it's like, no, no, bring it back together.
Yeah. What why does why does my gut tell me that this isn't gonna have a happy ending?
Dude, I don't know, man. I don't know because it's dark.
Oh yeah, it
It's
is.
in the title, Sam.
It's in the title, man.
Uh yeah.
Yeah, crazy. Yeah. Well,
What else happened this week? This new this new investigator guy really intriguing me.
he he's got to be part of the Sigmundus cult.
Maybe it's really interesting that these past two episodes he's really been he's on to Alexander.
Yeah.
Like as soon as he gets there, he's like, Alexander. Why did he take his wife's last name, not his
Yeah.
own? And he just keeps hounding and pushing. And even Charlotte's like, I don't know why you're doing this, dude.
Yeah.
Oh, speaking of which, I had a thought. Charlotte reminds me of Jodie Foster. She's like the German Jodie
Huh.
Foster. I've been seeing a lot of Jodie Foster right now because the new True Detective just started,
Yeah.
and I was like, hey, yeah, she's kind of, and she's a cop, she's a sheriff, so I'm
Yeah.
like, oh yeah, it kind of reminds me of Charlotte.
Interesting.
So yeah,
I can see
um,
that. Yeah. Oh man, and yeah, quick tangent, man. Like Charlotte is Charlotte's having to sidestep, this investigator,
yeah,
pretty hardcore, but yeah, she sees in, because Regina has the box of stuff that future Jonas left
yeah,
in the hotel room, and she finds the photocopy of Tannhauser's book, the book, what Kat lovingly refers to as the timey-wimey book.
okay, I like it.
She's like, I don't remember what it's called, and I told her the title. She's like, nope, it's timey-wimey book. I was like, okay, so it's timey-wimey book. um yeah, and she's like freaking out, and she calls her husband, and all that, and it's like, how, Charlotte is more related to this now than ever.
Yeah,
And it's scary. It's scary because we see what happens with people who come into contact with time travel. They
hmm
get time displaced, they're getting lynched, they get
it's
accused for a crime, and then they get locked
yeah,
in jail and have to see their whole life pass in front of them. It's not fun. Time
it's
travel isn't fun in this show.
yeah, no, it's not, but it's really interesting because here we are, two episodes into season two, and we're starting to see like every character in the show is starting to be put into one of two categories. Either someone who is somehow a victim of time travel,
Hmm.
or someone who is so like just thoroughly entwined into the loop that they're also the victim. So you have someone
Mm.
like Jonas or Mikkel, I guess you could say, who it was just like a series of quote unquote accidents that got them into this story and this plot, and like they're having to navigate their ways through now.
Hmm.
Um, but then you have someone like Charlotte who's like, well, wait a second, her adoptive grandfather, we found out as of last week, is the one who made the time machines, Tannhaus.
Hmm.
But then we also find out, okay, he has some kind of connection with Sigmundus because he has the picture.
Hmm.
So she is slowly becoming more and more into it. Kind of like Peter, Peter is just kind of doing his own thing, hiding his own secrets. And it's like, well, wait a second. He was a victim because he kind of stumbled onto the dead kid's body. We don't find that out until the season 1 finale.
Mm-hmm.
So he just stumbles into it. But he's the son of Helgi, who's so thoroughly entwined in everything.
Mm-hmm.
So it seems like you fall in by accident or you fall in by fate.
Yeah.
Maybe it's all by fate. Maybe even accidents are fate.
I mean, yeah, maybe.
Yeah. Yeah, so I don't know. It's really interesting to look at the cast now. It really you're starting to like separate everyone, and you're like, this is why we're following these people. Okay,
Yeah.
this is why Jonas and Ulrich and Charlotte are leads, you know,
Mm-hmm.
instead of the cop with one eye, who's
Yeah.
kind of just there. It's like this is why we're following these characters. Charlotte's getting more and more entwined on her own because she's investigating it, but also because she's realizing her past is tied into it as well.
Mm-hmm.
So, oh man, so, and she even says right at the end, she's like, why didn't you tell me who my parents were or something like that? Oh, when she's talking to Peter, she's like, why did he never tell me about Tannhaus? Why did he never tell
Mm-hmm.
me who my real parents were?
Yeah.
And now she's freaking out because there's this Sigmundus photo and she's like, uh-oh.
Mm-hmm. It's a lot. This is a lot.
Yeah, man. To
And the
quote
word,
Marty McFly,
this is heavy.
it's getting heavy. Yeah.
I was just about to say that. I was like, to
Yeah.
another time traveler, this is heavy.
Oh, man. It's interesting to see Mikhail going to school now, and he has like the Goonies poster in his room,
Mhm.
and like this poor kid, man, like the shell shock he must be going through, and like
It's interesting that he's also waking up, like jolting awake, just like Jonas
yeah,
is, you
yeah.
know, like father, like son.
Which is
Um,
interesting because when we start the show, Jonas is on all this medication,
mhm.
and we're led to believe it's because they said like he kind of broke after his dad killed himself,
Yeah,
you know. But I'm also
which
wondering,
understandable.
yeah, yeah, for sure. But I'm also wondering, like, is it something like, is it genetic? Like,
Mm.
is this something that Mikhail goes through? So Michael ends up passing it on to Jonas.
Hmm.
Just whatever ailment that is. We don't know what it is. You know what I mean?
Timey-wimey disease.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's
Yeah.
kind of like wh- not seasonal depression. It's like
Temporal depression.
temporal depression. You
I
know,
love it.
Jonas just thinks he's depressed and like you are, but you have no idea how depressed you actually are. Temporal depression.
Temporal
Wow.
depression. Hell yeah.
Wow. That's crazy.
That sounds like some sci-fi bullshit,
That's
you
gonna be
know?
the name of our next novel.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh boy. That if I had to give an Americanized name to dark, that's what I would give it.
Temporal depression.
Temporal depression.
Maybe that's what we'll call this episode. Last week, I just called it Choose Your Weapon because I'm like, well, we talked about weapons a lot. I was so close to calling it Introducing the Toilet Boys.
Oh no. I'm so glad you didn't.
There was just one
God.
part of the episode though, so I'm like, no, 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 no. That's
Yeah,
that's not how I
yeah.
want to be remembered.
God, we talked about weapons so much more than we
Not
did
like
that
this.
one bit. Not like
Yeah,
this,
but that
Matthew.
one bit was so much funnier than the weapon
God.
talk. Oh man.
Uh,
Not how I wanted. This isn't the legacy I wanted.
right?
Lose it. Lose that legacy. Get lost.
Couple of years from now when we're, doing a live episode,
Uh-huh.
in front of hundreds of people at some convention, and that's how we're gonna be introduced.
The Toilet
We're
Boys.
gonna have some MC back featuring the Toilet Boys.
it's gonna be when we're in Antarctica. It's gonna be the last cold place on the planet, so it's gonna be
Hmm.
our Christmas con is gonna be in Antarctica, and they're like, "Welcome to the toilet, boys!" Yeah,
All
damn it.
20 people. Be like, we're so glad y'all were able to make it.
Yeah, yeah. I wonder. I wonder if there's like a scientific number of how many single people you need to like start like a race, like a human race, you know? Like if the last survivors of mankind were in Antarctica, how
Hmm.
many people would we need
Hmm.
to successfully
To like
continue the
kickstart the
species?
human race. Yeah.
Yeah.
Again. Huh.
I think in Star Trek, they talk about it in Next Gen. They said something like I don't they probably just pulled it out of their butts. They're like,
Mhm.
we need 34 um couples to meet the minimum requirements of starting a new race. I'm like,
Hmm.
is that a thing or is that just random?
That's interesting.
Yeah. So in the case of that Star Trek episode, they've been cloning themselves as spawn because they can't procreate anymore.
Mm.
So they're either going to have sex with a bunch of people on the Enterprise or they're going to clone them. And I'm like, well, okay. But I just thought that was an interesting thing. Like, wow, okay, yeah, like what's the minimum? Because once that first batch of kids comes out, the second batch, it's going to be less, like half as compatible because the first one's going to be so small, like half of them might be related, because of siblings. I don't know. I don't know.
Mm.
Maybe that's what dark is.
No.
No,
I mean, if anything, Dark is more like Star Wars, where I feel like there's like three families
that are
who are
screwing up the
tech
entire world.
who are technically all one family, yeah, who just keep screwing everything up.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, that's interesting. It is kind of interesting though. That's true because the Conwalds and what's York's last name? Nielsen.
Nielsen,
And the
yeah.
Nielsens, they're tied together because of Mikkel.
Mm-hmm.
That's very interesting.
Mm-hmm.
They're the Skywalkers of the dark
Mm-hmm.
verse.
Oh, great. The Skywalkers of Wyndon. Of course
Yeah.
this sucks.
It's really interesting because I did make the joke at the end of the last episode about what were you saying? Something like, what if I time travel or I'm in dark? I'm like, oh, that means I'm gonna cheat on my wife. And I said that as a joke, but like I wonder if what do you think about that in the show? Because it does seem like there's a lot of um
Cheating? Adultery?
yeah, I mean for sure it was Hannah and Ulrich,
Mm-hmm.
but it just feels like I don't know. I wonder if this kind of goes back to what we were talking about earlier, like destiny, like you're either a victim of time travel or you're destined to be a victim of time travel,
Mm.
because it seems like there's just so much. It's crazy how like things are repeating, and you've brought that up several times. Like it feels like things are repeating. You
Mm-hmm.
see comparisons between the different timelines and stuff, and I don't know, maybe is do you think, because we could talk night and day about time travel as like, oh, someone goes back, steps on a butterfly, it changes the future, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Is there a more terrifying type of like maybe like a morality shift or something? Like it feels like Wyndon is like plagued or
Mm.
cursed, you
Mm-hmm.
know? So maybe it's not so much that like one specific thing happened, but it's like, oh, you could say like Yorick going back and trying to murder a child. That's one of like the worst crimes slash sins possible.
Mm-hmm.
Can a time traveler who goes back in time try to murder a child? Could that somehow taint a timeline?
Mm.
Maybe temporal depression is a real thing, you know?
Yeah, yeah.
That's something I've been thinking a lot just watching this show. I'm like, huh,
Hmm.
maybe we do affect, you know how we affect people just in our lives,
Yeah.
just anywhere from like meaningful actions and conversations to just our overall vibes. Like, oh man, I don't need that kind of negativity around me today. You know, like,
Yeah.
is there something to be said about that on a larger scale? You know?
Yeah. I definitely think so. You know, we're moving a little bit more into like Sound of Thunder kind of territory, you know,
Mhm.
or even, just kind of generally into towards like Marvel's What If,
Yeah,
a whole different course of action, takes, causes a huge, universal shift.
yeah.
Um, yeah. Yeah, but I do think a more maybe realistic thing is that idea of like tainting some sort of timeline or
Yeah.
yeah, kind of like placing some sort of curse, upon this thing that kind of broadly speaking of time loops. uh I'm gonna spoil Netflix's Haunting of Bly Manor. So if
Ooh.
you
Okay.
haven't seen Haunting of Bly Manor, pause, go forward maybe like 10 minutes or something. um I don't know how long I'll talk,
10 minutes. Okay.
yeah, I'll tell. Just when you hear me go, and we're back. That's where you can do that, but not now. So in the future, anyway. So one of the ghosts at Bly Manor is this faceless woman who wanders the grounds of the manor, and any human who gets caught in her path, she like chokes and drags, and she drags them from wherever she finds them, she drags them down into the lake.
Crap.
And she pops up a couple of times. She's like the big cliffhanger ending for like 2 episodes.
Hmm.
uh and then we get her episode, and her episode is about in I'm going to sum it up as fast as possible. Two sisters who inherit the house. They're down on their luck. They're trying to like entice suitors and do all this stuff. Well, the sister who turns into the ghost, like she ends up like finding a suitor. They marry, all this stuff, but she gets sick, and she's dying, and it's not pretty.
Hmm.
But as a way, there's something about her dying that she's just like, I don't accept it. She's being given the last rites by a priest, and she's like, I don't accept that. And I refuse to accept that. And her sister hops in and is like, yeah, you tell this man, sister, you tell this man that like you're not gonna do this. And it's sort of like she's casting this spell. It's sort of like they're casting a spell.
Hmm.
And it unfortunately prolongs her life. So she's getting older, but she's still sick. She's living
Hmm.
in sickness. She can't see her child, she can't see her husband, blah blah blah. Well, her sister finally has enough and murders her.
Oh crap.
Uh, and so it's a whole thing, and you're like, well, crap, okay. But she left a chest full of like all of her gowns, all her jewelry, all this beautiful stuff. She left it for her daughter so that when the time came, she can open up the chest and, like it'll be there. Well, all that stuff is expensive. And since everybody's down on their luck, the alive sister is like, well, maybe I'll just open it and maybe we'll sell all this stuff. But that's not really why she wants to open it. She wants to open it because she's jealous. She wants all the stuff for herself. So she
Mm.
the chest, and she picks up a dress. And then through the sleeves of the dress, these ghostly hands come and they choke the sister to death.
Oh crap.
So it turns out that the eldest sister is now a ghost, and her life is just living in this room. It's the room where she died. She
Mhm.
wakes up every day and she can't go anywhere. She's just walking around the room. She can kind of vaguely hear things, but she's just going around the room until one day she hears the door open. And she thinks, oh, like at this point, she's like, maybe it's my daughter, coming in there. And nope, it's her sister. She's doing all this stuff. She's taking the dress, trying to put it on, blah, blah, blah. And in her fury, in her rage, she chokes out her sister. And you're like, oh crap, okay. And so she like after that happens, the husband and the daughter, they're like, okay, we're moving. This place is not this place is bad. I think there is an evil here. So they take the chest, and now the viewpoint changes where it's like, oh, the eldest sister, she can like open the curtains, and it's like, so essentially like her spirit is like lodged in one of her dresses or like the chest,
Mhm.
if you want to get like technical. So now that it's moving out of the spot where it was, she's able to see the world, and she's seeing like, oh, they're gonna take, we're all going on an adventure together, we're all going on a journey. They throw the chest into the lake. They throw the chest in the lake because he's like, I this is bad. This chest is cursed. It's caused plagued my family, all this stuff. That was in, I don't know, the 1700s, 1800s, whatever.
Mhm.
We're now in like the 1980s. That chest has been there for years. And it's then the spirit of this woman has just been trapped in there, living in fury and in rage. And it's like that's the one thing that this spirit has held on to.
Mhm.
So through the ages, through the years, fury is the only thing she knows.
Mhm.
And so now she walks the grounds and, yeah, essentially just finds whoever is in her path and just pulls them down with her. And now all the ghosts are trapped. Nobody can leave Bly Manor. None of the ghosts can leave Bly.
Mhm.
A huge plot point of the show. So then it's like, what has to happen, so it's like essentially this one person, the actions of this person inadvertently has cursed this entire place, and it
Mhm.
has hurt so many other people. So many people are dead just because of a thing, just because of one choice, just because of one
Yeah.
person's action. And it's such a beautiful story, and you're just like, holy crap. When you get to that episode, you're like, oh my God, what? And
Yeah.
then that's not even the last episode, because then you got to get to the season finale, and then you're
Yeah.
just crying for like the last 45 minutes. Uh, and it's worth it and it's great, but I sort of feel like, oh, sorry. Whoa, that was crazy. So anyway, I feel like that all that to say that that's sort of the vibe I get from Winden. If all of these things
Mhm.
are time looping, and like we said earlier, like how many versions of this have happened, how many time loops have there been? It sort of feels like uh it's decay. It's like radioactive decay.
Oh,
It's like
that's a good
like
point. Yeah.
bringing we're not just bringing matter or ourselves to
Yeah.
these things. It's almost like we're bringing this it's like we're bringing our vibes. We're bringing our vibes
Yeah.
portal,
S-
whatever we've been through.
So like we don't have any evidence or we haven't seen anything to suggest it. Like all we really know is like older Claudia was talking about the loops and
Yeah.
they're about to end. That's really all we know. But
Yeah.
that is an interesting concept. Like what if each loop gets darker and darker? Things
Mm-hmm.
get worse and worse.
Mm-hmm.
Um, that's something really fascinating. Uh, wow, yeah,
I love that. Maybe we are gonna write temporal depression and
yeah,
use that. Like that's
yeah.
sort of the
So
crux of
so
the
like
thing.
yeah, like
Yeah.
Winden is like the Bly Manor. It's like this one thing happened and it kind of tainted
Mm-hmm.
everything, and like it's kind of like the thing of I like that you said decay. You know,
Mm-hmm.
because that to me that's almost scarier than a curse. Because what
Yeah.
we've been raised to believe in movies or books or religion or whatever, like everyone has different opinions on like what is like a curse. Can curses be broken? You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
But decay, on the other hand, that's like a natural process,
Yeah.
and that's terrifying, Uh, so it's like almost like the idea of, well, okay, my first thought was like poltergeist. Isn't
Mhm.
the homes, they're built on like a Native American like graveyard, right?
I believe so.
I
Yeah.
think that's what the plot is. So it's
Hmm.
something like, think of it something like that, but instead of it actually being like ghosts physically haunting and trying to kill you, it's just like, no, you'll just never know peace. You'll never know happiness. You know,
Hmm.
you're you're cursed to live a mid life. Like how
Wow.
like how screwed up is that, right? Like
That
how messed
sucks.
up is
Yeah.
that?
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think everyone at some point has those feelings of like, man, this town, like what would it have been like if I had left, you know?
Yeah.
And they talk a lot about that in season 1 with Yorick,
Mhm.
and he's like, I just want to get out. I just want to leave. It's like, you
Yeah.
can never leave. This is Winden.
He was the first person I thought of when started talking about decay, and it's like you're you're trapped. You can't leave.
Yeah.
You know, if this is the fallout of time travel,
Yeah.
like too much time travel in this area has caused all of these bad things to happen, caused the entire mood, the entire like spirit of a town to change for the worse. Then it's like, yeah, that's your punishment. You can't leave. You'll never leave the town you grew up in.
This is going to be really interesting when we finish the show and get back into Lost, because
And be
there's a
like,
lot
God,
of
this is
time travel in Lost.
so American. Like, of course, they don't talk about
Right?
any of the temporal
Like,
depression.
so we're either
No.
going to write a novel called Temporal Depression,
Hmm.
or our Lost sequel is going to be really dark. I think that would be cool though, like,
Yeah.
I like that concept. Like, the timeline is something pure because it's
Hmm.
natural.
Hmm.
And what do? We screw up nature all the time.
Hmm.
You know, life finds a way, but we got to go screw it up.
Hmm.
So that, in a way, it taints it and it starts decaying. And the more we do it, that's something they never, like in Doctor Who. It's like, no, things literally start falling apart. You're gonna tear open the universe. It's like, no, you just
Yeah.
make it suck.
Yeah.
The pure stuff, the good stuff starts to leave. And I think we feel like that's our world right now. There's just so much just darkness and hate and anger right now, and it feels like we can see no end to it. So I think that's why it's a really kind of relevant storytelling technique. Damn, this episode did not go where I was expecting, and we still didn't talk about a lot of it. I
I
just want to
know.
bring up Magnus and Francesca real quick, and how, yeah, blah blah blah. If you're listening to this, you watch the show, you know what happens. But
Yeah.
I love the line, because he says, like, everyone has secrets, and she calls him out. She's like, it's not the secrets that's our problem. It's, oh, hang on, I actually wrote it down. Uh, the secrets aren't the problem. It's the shit we all project onto others. It's like,
Hmm.
yeah, yeah,
Hmm.
man. Ugh.
Which in the very next scene is future Jonas talking to Hannah and talking about it's all the secrets. It's what's destroying us. And it's like
Yeah.
it's such the inverse of what we just heard. You
Yeah,
know?
exactly. And I'm like, okay, is
Yeah.
he right or is Francesca right? Like, I,
I
I don't know. Can they
I
both be right?
I think they can both be right because it's like I think because that's kind of the thing. Like Francesca's secret isn't life shattering. Like it's not terrible.
Yeah.
It's just the thing that like it. If wrong people see it, they're gonna cry foul or whatever.
Yeah.
Um, but it's also a thing that she doesn't feel the need to have to explain. So it's like,
Yeah.
okay, cool. Conversely, though, you have people who are having affairs, or people who are going back in time and trying to kill children, all of these things,
Yeah.
like all of these different things. It's like I definitely I see both viewpoints, and I think that's for us to decide as the audience. Like
Hmm.
we've seen all the viewpoints.
Hmm.
So the characters haven't. They only have what they know in front of them. Because
Yeah.
most of the kids, they don't know about time travel. So
Right.
like
Right.
who's to say they would do a better job at any of it
Yeah.
than Jonas or the adults. So,
Yeah.
oh,
Um.
yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So, lastly, before we wrap up, because we're already pushing it again,
Hmm.
I love when Claudia meets herself and she really starts to understand that she's seen her future self, and I keep forgetting because you don't really notice unless it's a close up and you pay attention. She has it's called heterochromia,
Hmm.
where each eye is different color, and so did older Claudia. I was like, oh, dude, like just to see the look of like kind of terror on her face when she
Hmm.
realizes it's her. I was like,
Hmm.
oh man,
I
um,
completely forgot too until they were looking at each other. I was like, oh, dang, that's
yeah,
right.
yeah. Okay, so they did mention that the loop, it's a 33-year cycle. That's what Claudia mentions, and it's
Hmm.
about to end in 5 days, which is when the apocalypse is going on.
Hmm.
Episode starts 5 days before the apocalypse. It's
Hmm.
like crap. Um, Let me see. Lastly, I just want to say we got a little more of young Regina and Alexander. I like them together, man. Like it's so weird seeing them as such this young couple, and then to see them in the modern day being interrogated by the cops,
Hmm.
and I think it. I'm glad that they've kind of gone the route they have with them, because Alexander is very business, very he seems very cold, maybe even cutthroat a little bit.
Hmm.
He's the in charge of this plant. We do know he was robbed a bank or something when he was younger, so we do know he has that side to him. But when it comes to his family, like he's always been supportive, and I like to see we this is most of last season, but we see him like comforting Regina and stuff.
Hmm.
And we're seeing that now of him as a younger man with younger Regina. I'm like, it's super easy just to make this guy like a villain. Like, oh, of course, he's the mysterious head of the nuclear power plant. It
Hmm.
would have been easy to write him off and like him not care about his wife or him just ignore her. But no, you can tell that there's still something there between them. He just might he has resting bitch face, you know. But it's cool to really see that. Like that would have been the American route. We just turned him into a douchebag, and he hasn't really done anything to do, to seem like that. So I'm like,
Yeah.
all right, all
Yeah.
right, that was a good choice. I like that. Regina deserves like that kind of stability in her life. Especially, man, it's so heartbreaking to see her young and in love in the 80s and then see her now 33 years later dealing with cancer. I'm like, oh
Hmm.
my God. And being interrogated by this freaking detective.
Yeah, which was interesting because again, the editing, that's spoiler alert, that's my MVP,
Oh,
this
the
this
editing?
the editor,
Yeah.
because again, we get a flashback to the 80s with Regina and Alexander, talking about Claudia, talking about her mom, and how she's like, like, I didn't get anything. I've never gotten anything from her. And Alexander, kind of like, very smoothly is just like, well, I mean, that's not true. Like, you inherited all your mother's good features,
Hmm.
and she's like, well, I didn't know there were any, blah, blah, blah. And, so it's like,
Yeah.
okay, like kind of sly. I like it.
Yeah.
But you directly cut from that to present day Regina being interrogated, obviously going through chemo. But you also have to figure in the fact that like Egon had cancer.
Yeah.
Regina has cancer.
Yeah.
Does Claudia have cancer?
I
And
don't know.
is time travel a way that because she's not around in the present? That's why I think
Hmm.
future Claudia is actually present day Claudia. Just
Oh yeah,
she's
yeah.
in time jumping. She's been going through time for so long that
Hmm.
she's kind of stayed the same age. Like I think, yeah. At least that
Well, wait a minute. Future
what's
Claudia
well
is
future
obviously older though.
well yes, he is obviously older, but what I mean is that I think future Claudia would just be 2019 Claudia.
Yeah, yeah, totally.
Okay, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah,
We
yeah,
we were
that's what
just
I
calling
mean.
her future
We've only
because
seen her in
in the
like the
80s.
yeah, in the bunkers, and all this stuff. And yeah, we only saw her in the
Oh
80s.
yeah, and she has the bunkers in the future and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. So,
uh
okay.
yeah, no, I see what you're saying. Yeah, that's really interesting. And older Claudia did tell modern Claudia, 80s Claudia, she's like, um, enjoy your time with Regina. You don't have much left. It's like,
Mhm.
but what did she say? Something about like, if
If
this works,
maybe Regina will live, or
yeah.
maybe she'll be saved, or something like that.
Yeah, I was like, oh crap.
Yeah, yeah.
All right. All right. We'll see.
We'll see what happens.
Damn, what a damn good show, dude.
Hmm.
Yeah, MVPs, editors. Okay, real quick. Predictions.
I threw out so many this
Oh, yeah,
episode.
you kind of did already. Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Girl from the future is somewhere, has something with the, which is the thing we didn't really talk about, but I have theories that like the Sigmundus cult is either around or has influence in present day,
Mm,
and because also like the future society that Elizabeth is sort of involved in, very cult like, and kind of feels like it would be in line with whatever Sigmundus is doing,
yeah. Yeah.
tapping into time, trying to get to a better place, whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, absolutely. Well, next week we're talking about Dark season 2, episode 3, Ghosts.
Ooh.
I have no tease. I'm pretty sure I'm done with the teases just because I was looking at them. I'm like, I don't know, like any one of these things could be considered like a spoiler, you know?
That's why I like it when you do the write-ups.
Well, yeah, but like I don't exactly remember what's coming. Usually it's just my own version of what Netflix says. I'm like, okay, I'll do it
Mm,
this way. I'll
yeah.
try next time.
Okay.
Next week we're heading to Bly Manor. We're gonna meet some ghosts.
I
Everyone,
like
thank you
it.
for joining us. What an episode, man! Like,
Fantastic episode.
yeah, it's so good. Um, I want to know everyone's thoughts on it. Use hashtag Lost Legacies. We'll see it.
Mhm.
Hit us up. I'm trying to think if there's anything else we need to discuss. Not really. Let us know your feelings on this episode. Let us know your predictions. And until next time, you can find me on Twitter at _Mahimenes and on Instagram at Holy Hand Grenade of Antioch.
And you can find me on Twitter, Instagram, and Threads at Real, that's REEL, Texas Weirdo.
Until next time,
Going dark.